Welcome to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast with your hosts, Maria Casillas and Nino. Christ Centered Stewardship is a ministry of new money habits designed to equip believers to steward everything God has given them, including their time, talent, and treasure in ways that bring Him honor, glory, and praise. You can join our growing community on Facebook and submit your questions to podcast at newmoneyhabits.com. Now, to begin today's episode, here is Maria Casillas and Nino Villa.
Well, welcome back to the Christ Centered Stewardship podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nino Villa, alongside of me, my partner and co-host, Maria Casillas.
Hello.
Hello and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. It's crazy that we're already in a new year.
Yeah, don't even get me started. Well, as we launch the new year and we launch this new podcast, if you missed out on the premiere episode, definitely go back and check that out. But we are going to kind of address some trends that we're seeing, some headlines, that sort of thing. And in and through the podcast, we are going to pull back and kind of get to the core of what's going on and apply some of the values and beliefs that we have to help people manage and steward their lives well, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we think about all of the things that God has blessed us with, the time, the resources, the relationships, at the end of the day, we just want to steward those gifts and those blessings in a way that brings God honor, glory, and praise. What's going on in the new year for you?
Well, I mean, every new year seems to be a repeat of years in the past, I think, but not just for me. I think I see a lot of trends going on just in the world in general. I mean, wouldn't you agree that this is typically the time that people will set goals for themselves? I personally went away from the whole idea of New Year's resolutions a long time ago, but still, it's a time typically for resetting, it seems, and figuring out what went very well in the past, what would I like to see go differently in the future. And so I think I'm not alone in that this seems to be a time of resetting. One of the things I've noticed, though, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, Nino, is that oftentimes what we do, like the goals that we set for ourselves, are a little bit more, I don't know, worldly, maybe is how I would put it. Like it seems to be more focused on what the world says we should be doing. So, for example, one of the big ones tends to be like weight loss. I don't know about anybody else, but many people will overindulge during the Thanksgiving. And well, I guess it starts with Halloween for some people, but they're overindulging through Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And then they get to January and they're like, oh, whoops, what happened? Like, what did I do? And so many times people will set weight loss goals. But why? And that's kind of the thing that I am very curious about. It seems as though there's this, this worldly idea of what we should look like. What these, not just the weight, but physical appearance in general, I think is one of those things. Whereas the Bible tells us that the body is a temple, and so if we are to be a temple for Christ, what does that really mean? What should our New Year's resolutions or our goals actually reflect? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to kind of go back to where you started with. It's that time of year where people seem to set goals and they reflect on what went well and what didn't go well. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I've met a whole lot of people that reflect on what went well.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, just human nature sometimes is I got to correct the things I need to correct, right? I have to, if I'm resolving to do something, I'm resolving to do something different. And if something went well, maybe I don't reflect on that as much as I should, so that I then continue good habits, but I focus only on what needs to be changed. And not only from that standpoint of like that negativity, but to your point, we get to the new year, and so many people might have weight loss goals because they overindulged in those from Halloween to Thanksgiving to Christmas, like you said. But sometimes we're not just overindulging in food, we're also overindulging in entertainment and gift giving and these other things. And so now we resolve to get out of debt. And so there's weight loss goals and there are debt goals. And so it's just this weird time of year where we're kind of reminded of all the things we're doing wrong if we're looking through that worldly lens, like you were pointing out, right? So because why? There's some worldly standard that I'm trying to live up to, rather than if I were stewarding God's gifts and resources well to begin with, then my behavior there shouldn't be such a dramatic change in my behavior just because Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas came about. So as you talked about it, I was just like wrestling with, hold on, like, why are we there?
Yeah, and it's interesting. So this is kind of looking forward. When you say, that our behavior is so starkly different, why are we wrestling with this? If we are stewarding well, then why would we see these giant ebbs and flows? So I know for ourselves, as we are coming off of the holiday season, I can easily put myself back in that whole beginning of December time. And I know that both my husband and I are, I'm going to use the word guilty, of thinking, oh, well, it's just that time of year. So even if we're not just getting gifts for people, we are purchasing things that in June we would not somehow justify for ourselves. But somehow, like, the miracle of December comes and we're like, oh, let's justify this. And so I share that because December's coming again. It's behind us today, but it is coming again. And so are all of these other times in our lives and seasons. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we stewards or are we owners? And I think if we get into the mentality that we are owners of all of these things, then we just kind of say, well, we can do whatever we want. We have the resources right now, and so we're going to do that. And the opportunities are abounding in December, right? But are we stewarding those well? And so I'm hoping that we can take what is the beginning of this new year and sort of change our mindset around that, so that it does seem that life is going to happen, you guys. I mean, circumstances, we cannot change those. I totally get that. But can we see a more common thread and maybe bring some of those highs and lows a little bit closer to the center if we are being more steward rather than owner minded?
I got to tell you, this conversation is already very convicting, because while our value is that we value stewardship over ownership, I am not a perfect person. I do not do this perfectly. Right?
Oh,
and so,
I thought you did. I do. And so I thought that this would just be
that the two perfect people in the world were showing up to tell everybody else how to do it, right?
That's right. That's right. I thought that's what we signed up for. Oh, okay, we're done. Of course, I'm kidding. None of us is perfect at this, but I appreciate your honesty about it.
But as you're sharing, I'm thinking about, right, like, what does it really mean? And I'm wrestling myself with, what does it mean when I behave like I'm the owner? Right? If I behave like I'm the owner rather than simply a steward of the resources that have been given to me, man, this is taking me back to my prayer time this morning, where I was kind of wrestling with some similar thoughts, not exactly the same, but just this idea that, am I managing the things that God has blessed me with in a way that brings him honor, glory, and praise? And I can't say that 100% I am, because I look at food around the holiday season, and to me it's feast and festival time, but then there's also the kid inside of me that's like, if I don't grab that cookie now, it won't be there later. And so it doesn't matter that I've had 5. I got to have number 6 because it won't be there. What is going on?
Yep. Yeah, totally understand. And I've heard you say, maybe not in this episode, but I seem to remember in the premiere that you were personally convicted by just even using the words my time
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that, this isn't actually my time, it's God's time and He's given it to us. So I love that you have been able to just hear yourself and start to change that language. One area that I've actually done that in as well, it's sometimes it feels a little bit archaic and maybe even a little gloom sometimes, but I've actually started using the phrase God willing. And I do this in a way that in and of itself doesn't seem archaic or gloom, but I'll tell you what, when I use it, and then you're like, oh, I could see why people would be like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
But when I leave the house, for example, and I tell my kids, I'll be back. I'll be back in 25 minutes or be back in 4 hours. And I've started to actually just say God willing. And that for a while, they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I think it's just that recognition that I don't know God's will in all things. And so I have no idea whether I will for sure be back in 3 hours or not. I mean, and it could be, it could be catastrophic where I end up losing my life between now and then, or it could just be something where there's something that happens that sets me back and I'm, 2 hours late or something. So there's definitely a continuum that could happen, but it's just that reminder to myself and to my soul that I'm not in control of all these things. And so I've used that as just a verbal reminder for that.
Yeah, and so my practical mind of like, okay, so then how do I apply that, right? Because you're absolutely right. I mean, I have been trying to be more. I'm a word snob, and so sometimes I get on myself about, oh, it's not my time, it's God's time, and how am I spending it? I think that there is time for leisure, right? And so there's free will there, and you can spend some time doing those things. But what is I guess for me, it's like, okay, so what's the takeaway here? It's the new year, and I'm making goals. I'm setting goals, but now I'm listening to Nino and Maria, and they're telling me I'm not an owner, and I should be stewarding. What does that look like?
It's a really good question. What does it look like? As you were listening to some of the stuff that I was saying, what was coming up in terms of how we can practically apply these things?
I was thinking about when you were talking about worldly standards around like health and weight, right?
Yeah.
I guess part of it is asking yourself, what do you want to do? How do you want to honor God with your body?
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like, right? And that's a question that every individual has to answer for themselves. It's going to be different for people. And so it becomes that. It becomes sitting down, and as you outline your New Year's resolutions, or as you and I like to, we're more goal-oriented than resolution. It's asking yourself, okay, if I have this body and it's a temple, and I'm more concerned about honoring God with this body than I am what the world thinks, my BMI should be. Mm-hmm. Then for me personally, for Nino, I think it's things like I'm a husband and a father, and I want to be able to remain active, and I want to be able to get out and play with my children. And so what must I do when it comes to like diet and exercise to ensure that I can continue to be the husband and the father that God has called me to be? I also enjoy athletics, and when I enjoy those things, I praise the Lord that I can participate in those things. So I better steward my body in a way that I can accomplish these other things for His glory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was beautifully put. I also think that that was more of like that macro look. And I think you can actually bring it down to more of a micro approach where it's like each food choice that I make, is this particular food good for my body? Will it nourish what I need so that I can go out and do the things that I'm called to do? And that doesn't mean that, we're perfect. We've already established that we're not, and we're always working on these things. But if we can be more mindful in the moment, like when we're figuring out what it is that we're going to feed ourselves or our family. And I mean, that's one of the things that's convicting for me, Nino, is that, even if I make better choices for my own body, as a mother, am I insisting that my children make better choices for theirs? And at what point is that me providing food that's going to be nourishing for them rather than just something that they're willing to eat? Which, if my children know that those aren't always the same thing. So I think that we can just, with each individual decision, start to be a little bit more mindful of that.
Yeah, and it makes me think about how coming off of the Christmas season, we've probably acquired new material goods too, and asking ourselves and challenging ourselves to, okay, how can I use the blessings that I have in a way that brings God honor, glory, and praise?
Yes, and also to that point, what are things that I no longer am using and who can use them instead? So rather than just hanging on to the excess that we have, just like eating that fifth cookie, which
sixth. It was a sixth.
Sorry. I can't try to give you a little bit of credit there. So how do we actually hang on to, why do we actually hang on to those goods that we're not even using? How many things are sitting in your garage that you haven't touched in 4 years? Oh, wait, I'm talking to myself. And who could use those things so that they are being stewarded well? That is part of stewarding things well, is recognizing who can use that. If we're talking about managing, right? We've talked about managing before. And I haven't loved the word manager, but I'm going to use it here on purpose. When we look at a manager of a company, what is that manager called to do? Are they called to, just tell people what to do? No, a good manager is not a micromanager. It's somebody who leads. It's somebody who recognizes the gifts and the talents of the people who work for him or her and are able to sort of help that group of people do what they're supposed to do well, so that as a group, right, individuals are doing their thing, but as a group they maintain, or they do what they're supposed to do. I don't know how to finish that sentence. But as a group, they accomplish the thing that's supposed to be done. And so that's really what part of this is like when we talk about stewarding our things, what is the purpose of that thing? And is that thing's purpose being served sitting in a tote in your garage? Probably not. So release it, let it go and be the thing that serves well to somebody else who could use that. So that's just a really small example of how, we're talking about not just our bodies, but other areas too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So another aspect of the podcast is that we take questions from our listening audience, and we have Facebook groups and people post there, and so they're searching for advice. And I have such a question for us today. I'm going to summarize the question, then I'm going to give a little bit of background here. So the poster asks, should I quit my job and use my 5-month peace of mind fund? She calls it an emergency fund. We call it a peace of mind fund. Or tough it out until I find a new job? So that's the essential question here is, should I quit my job and use my savings, or should I tough it out? And the background here is that the poster has her current job pays very well, but it is draining her both mentally and physically. So she's tired. She says that she's already reduced her hours down to 4 days a week, so she's trying to find some balance there. And then interestingly enough, she says, I know I should. And anytime you and I hear words like that, those are big red flags.
Go off.
I know I should look for another job before quitting. She currently has 5 months of expenses saved. She's looking for advice, and she's open to constructive criticism, which is exactly why I wanted to address this particular post, because I think it goes way beyond just the you should do this or you should do that.
Yeah. There's one other just small piece of there that I'd like to point out before we jump into the conversation, and that is that she said, I know deep down I would feel like I'm wasting my money just because I'm tired. So I just want to throw that in there as well, because I'm sure that's something that I will be talking about. And I wanted to make sure that our listeners have some basis on some foundation from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's so much here to unpack, so much. I think that this actually goes really well with what we were just talking about earlier about worldly versus biblically. And especially when you mention the word should, I should be doing this. And the question becomes, okay, because there are things that, we should be doing, but where does the should come from? And if it's because the world says that we should be doing this, then maybe that's it. But I'm guessing, and I don't know specific scripture references, but I feel like there is something about like not leaving a job before having another one. I don't know, again, what that specific is. Do you have any in your vault that you know of?
So there's a lot that the word has to say about work and things like, and I'm not going to remember the book, chapter, and verse off the top of my head right now, but things like, if a man does not work, he shall not eat. Okay, so
Yes.
That's just one little example. The Bible does warn us in Romans, Proverbs, and other places about being lazy, right? And the way that the poster kind of said, I think that I would be wasting my money just because I'm tired. She's even struggling with, would the time off be spent proactively and effectively searching for a new job, or would she kind of rest on her laurels? And so I think from that perspective alone, I would caution this poster not to do anything hastily. And of course, the Bible also talks about making hasty decisions. And so being diligent, being effective, being kind of locked in. There is a scripture that I kind of go back to when I think about work that we do that we might not necessarily enjoy. Mm-hmm. Galatians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24 say, and whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. This tells me that sometimes we're going to do work that we're not incredibly thrilled about, but that all the work we do, we should be doing it as if we work for the Lord rather than just working for men. And when you can have that perspective shift, when you can go from I work for so-and-so company or so-and-so boss to I serve the one true living God, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, it'll give you the oomph you need to kind of muster up the energy each and every day. But I would encourage this poster to be looking for something else in the meantime. But start with, do the work unto the Lord.
Yeah. Years ago, I actually had to really buckle down and allow my heart to understand this and embrace that scripture. And I got to the point where I was even applying it to doing the dishes. But that is a story for a whole nother time. But just so you know, like it is something that it does have a mindset shift, and it helps create that for you. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I do also think, to your point, to hastily quit something would be probably not super prudent. But I do think that the whole idea of I would feel like I'm wasting my money just because I'm tired. The fact that she says it's deep down, that might be more of that, soul whispering to her type of thing. But also, I think that there is some of this is worldly, I think, because it's this, we have been sold this bill of goods that if we just grind all the time, that, everything is going to be fine. Just, stay up late, go to bed, get up early, stay up late. And we're told all of this thing, but is that really what we're called to do? I mean, if our body truly is a temple, and I believe that it is, don't we also need to recognize its need for rest? We need to, and look at the story of Mary and Martha. When Martha was just running around crazy, trying to make sure that everything was done around her, Mary was just wanting to sit at the feet of Jesus. And he said, she understands what's here. I won't be here all the time. And so a lot of people give Martha a bad rap with that story, and I'm not trying to do that at all. I mean, he doesn't even do that. He notices that she's trying to serve well, which I think we are called to do. But sometimes we just need to slow down, and we need to rest, and we need to be okay with that. And we need to be quiet sometimes in order to hear the whispers of God. And so with that being said, if this individual who is constantly grinding, and she said she tried to pull back by doing 4 days a week, but if there is something that is keeping her from being able to just be for a little bit, then maybe it is okay to slow down and look for something different. She did mention, and I don't know if you read this part of it, Nino, but I do remember her mentioning that her job pays well and she makes good money.
Yep.
So if that's the case, is that the thing that's keeping her there? And if it is the thing that's keeping her there, is that not technically more of a worldly desire? So just a little bit of pushback and food for thought.
Yeah. I think to that end, so often as kind of the sole provider for my own household, I kind of struggle with, it's always the Lord's provisions. And so the Lord's going to provide, but I do have to work, right? I have to do something. Like if I were a farmer, I got to get out there and I got to sow seed and I got to harvest and I got to do those things. And so sometimes you're kind of caught in between, like, yeah, it pays well. And if it pays well enough, maybe you can cut your hours some more. Maybe that's just an outside of the box thing where, like, in the in between, it's not got to be all or nothing, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the bigger point is if you can start to shift your perspective that no matter what work you're doing, no matter what season you're in, no matter what storm is off on the horizon, if your focus becomes the Lord, and Ephesians 6 and 7 says it as well, work with enthusiasm as though you were working for the Lord rather than people. So here in Colossians and Ephesians, the Apostle Paul in both cases is telling believers, like, your perspective needs to be that the things that you do, you're doing for Jesus. You're not doing just for company ABC or employer insert name here. Mm-hmm. And I think with that alone, you can start to shift, and then there will be momentum. Then all of a sudden, God's plan will come into clearer focus because your sight will be locked in on Him, and then He'll either say, "This is a door I'm closing, and here's the other door that I've opened for you. Go walk through that," or He might make it abundantly clear to you that I have you right where I want you for this season. And so just trust and do those things. But I think the greater point there is when our focus is on Christ, everything else begins to come into focus.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully stated. I will just wrap up this segment with one thing. What she started with was, I'm planning to quit my current job. I find this very interesting because it does not seem like she's actually asking a question. She's stating what her plan is, and she's looking for validation for said plan. Yeah. So the real question is, are you asking the right deity / people for that validation?
What do you mean by that?
Well, she's asking us, she's telling us her plan, asking us, the world, for that validation, when the real question is, what is God calling you to do? Don't just tell us your plans, ask him his, and cooperate with those.
Yeah. And even turning that same, you can still go to the Lord and say, Lord, here's what I'm planning on doing, right? This is where I'm at. Would you intervene? Would you let me know? Would you either validate that line of thinking or challenge it? And I think in part, if she hears this episode, it's challenged a little bit, where does your focus lie? So not only are we going to challenge the poster, every week we're going to give you a weekly challenge as well. So for our listeners, we want you to list 5 things that you currently view as yours. This is a nice little thing that you can do yourself, or you can jump onto like our Facebook group or any one of our social medias and engage there. But for the most part, you can do this on your own. And I want you to pray about releasing ownership to God.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Christ Centered Stewardship Podcast. Follow us on your favorite social media platform for more encouragement and support. And until next time, may the Lord keep you in perfect peace as you set your sight on Jesus.